is the transaction process differing than if you guys are providing that data, that intelligence in the middle, right? If we think about you know, the addressable TV process, I mean, it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is helping buyers be able to buy across platforms. Is that?
It's the buyers and the sellers. So if we put it into, we built a tool called the Audience Engine, and really it's based on our view of the population, that data spine, if you will, of who the population is. But then when you work with sellers, media owners, and tie those assets to the data aspect of who we are, and throw in other data assets, such as third-party data sources, you're able to come up with an idea of who the target is on the national level, and then where it exists within the addressable TV partners. Now, in some cases, we can solve the problem. It's based on age, income, and based on Simmons data. It's based on a lot of data that we store and carry. However, there may be instances where we're not able to solve the problem. So we bring that data together within our Audience Engine platform to solve a problem maybe a MasterCard or Medix or some other data source might be able to throw it. And we put it into this Audience Engine where it allows somebody like Dish to see how all this data interacts on a national level and then specifically on their platform. And where that becomes important to them and their sales force is that they can react pretty swiftly on it. They have an access to a tool that'll say, I want to find left-handed nurses who like to bowl. How many of them exist on our platform? If we take it a little bit step further, and the agency folks in the room, we're actually looking to extend that out. So where previously we would work with every single operator and trying to solve problems that they come to us with on a very ad hoc basis, now we're actually interacting with the agencies and even in the advertisers, since we have our own, and solving the problems directly and then moving it out to the operator base. So now we have this consistency that's really important for the advertising agencies to find out, did we target it properly? Did we target consistently across platforms, and was it measured and build out a true ROI?
Talk more about, I think, that last point. You said that consistency, and did you target it properly, did you measure it properly, right? And so we're talking about is defining segments beyond typical age, sex, demographics. As you say, we can get very granular to define segments that are 5 people big, and that's obviously not going to pass the test for anyone who wants to do transactions. You can define segments more broadly with still many more criteria. It sounds like what you're saying is, hey, Experian helps be in the middle so that if I have a bunch of different data sources that I'm using and a bunch of partners that I'm using, that there's a value in putting that together. Because why? Because it's easier, it's more consistent? I mean, is that...
It's definitely easier and it's more consistent, but it also provides you more avenues to approach it. So let's say somebody came in with, we work with a Dish or an agency, and they had a CRM file, which works great for us. We completely get the privacy nature, so we usually get access to that data. We can append it to our data assets, so we can learn about that beyond what was provided to us. But that CRM file in itself, many times doesn't produce the scale that's needed. So we have to build out. So we can profile that data, we can model that data, we can build it out using Experian data, right, in a very consistent manner. But let's not talk about the platform right now. Let's just talk about as population.
Sure.
So we build a very consistent view. Then let's go out a little further. Let's look at other data assets that we can throw into it. When we look at those 126 million households, we come to a target, let's say overall there's 10 million that exist in the US population. We then take that. That's the consistency we're looking at. Now we're trying to find out within our audience management platform, where do they exist? How many are on Dish? How many are on Comcast? How many are on DirecTV? How many are on Cablevision? So we have that very consistent target. Now we put it through the system, and we bring that data back, and we measure it in that same consistent way. What are the ROIs? What's the KPIs of that advertiser that they're bringing to the table? What are their data attributes? Might we have to look into that measurement to see what fits? And then lastly, what worked, but more importantly, what didn't work. So how do we improve going forward?
So clearly, to be relevant and to make this work, you've got to be part of the planning process, right? You're helping discover audiences that buyers can go activate on different platforms.
Yes.
You talked about this tool that you have. Is that your means of which to get this type of data in the hands of people that are creating these media plans?
So it's been a multi-stage step. For years, we've actually used a tool internally to help us fulfill the needs of our media providers. We protect their data incredibly to the nth degree. And whenever a problem came to us, we tried to help their sales force and have them execute those campaigns based on the data. But that's all in-house. In the last year, if not more, we started to roll this tool set, this Audience Engine platform, this tool set out to the media owners themselves. So now when their sales force are trying to solve problems, they can solve it themselves. They can actually start seeing these data assets against their platform, so they can build a very consistent audience. For example, even with Dish, it's gone from totally reliant on us to now their sales force is actually answering their own questions. Same thing with many of the other providers. As we go and take this a step further, what we want to do is put these tools in the hands of the agencies and advertisers, but still provide the privacy that's necessary. We don't give any data to anybody. We're actually giving a tool set to somebody so they can start playing with the data assets within the marketplace that we're creating to create that consistent audience across platforms, adjustable TV, or any of the other 20-plus channel partners that we might have in there.
Got it. For those that come from a digital world, plenty of data sources have made its way into the marketplace to be used as a targeting criteria. And you often hear about a lot of that, quote, third-party source data as being nowhere near as valuable as customers' own data, which certainly I can validate, and I'm sure you can as well.
Absolutely.
But I often say it's not, third-party data is not bad, bad data is bad, right?
I like that.
And
write that down, Bree.
There you go. You can, I'll charge you every once in a while for that one. But in all seriousness, I guess the thing that I'm curious about you helping maybe people understand is, at the core, you do handle PII, right? As you've talked about, right?
That's good.
And you do this in this privacy-safe way. Listen, a lot of this industry talks about the differences between probabilistic and deterministic IDs as you start talking about identity. I think a lot of stuff that's very much in the weeds, and I don't want to necessarily take the conversation that way, but help understand, I suppose, why you find it to be important that a company like Experian that actually understands people, what is it that you really see that gives you an advantage in the marketplace?
Right. So the data that we have provides accuracy and scale. So we can take a small piece of the truth and expand it out based on what that truth looks like. We bring in digital data. We can, but usually you're losing it at a skip and a jump as it gets off to the offline world, which is really where TV operates. It's a mailbox on your TV. It's a PII-rich environment, and that's really a vision of the truth. So we like that because it fits really well with us. However, we're not going to ignore the other data assets that are out there. If there is an offline attribute that we can bring in, we'll bring it in. Usually it's not to scale. So we have to use our data assets to take that little piece of information that we have, and that's really anonymized, not really great to go into a known entity from an unknown entity, but we can take that information, learn from it, build it out against our entire data asset to find a much more viable and usable target. And in addition, we can keep it separate from the CRM data and measure it in its own. So an example would be in many different ways. So example might be for a auto. Experian has auto data. It's one of the only two places you can get auto data. So we can come up with a target of our own that's based on people that have a propensity to be in the market for a vehicle X. We can do that on the shelf segments, or we can build that out of the custom. In addition, we have third-party data assets that actually has what autos are in the garage. In itself, we can't really use that, A, because it doesn't have a propensity, but B, it doesn't have the scale. But let's take it where we can and learn from it. So then we layer it on, and we can learn against it. Now, let's take that even a step further into the outside, because this plays into the data, but it also plays into the flexibility of what we can do when you get into the measurement. We get that exposure data back from the TV operator, PII state, and how many impressions they've seen. We actually match it with our auto registration data to find out how many people actually bought one of those cars or bought a car like it, so you can see the share of market. That's all PII-related information. But let's layer on more. Let's find out through our mobile partnerships, did somebody actually go into into one of those dealerships or any other dealerships over the time? Or if we were dealing with a dealership group, we can actually pixel a dealership's group, their sites, and start understanding who actually came to the site. So think of the different levels of aggregation data that plays in here. We can find out, A, did we target the right people in the market using our data or third-party data? B, can we measure it using the auto registration data we get from the government, using the fact that they went to a site and they're at least curious, or see that they went to the dealership and the salesperson maybe, didn't do their job.
Yeah. So a lot of this is direct marketing, direct mail, segmentation brought to television.
Absolutely.
Right? The world of direct mailers and direct response advertisers will immediately and are already very active in understanding this world and no doubt applying a lot of that science to the world of television. what are you seeing in terms of marketers that maybe don't have that historic underpinning and that type of kind of response-driven advertising? How quickly are you seeing them adopt to this type of thinking or use this type of kind of data intelligence to apply to their marketing efforts?
It's been gradually growing. Unfortunately, I don't see them as brilliant as I did about a year ago because everybody's starting to get it. They're starting to see the aspects, and in fact, we back the process up from what is the goal we're trying to achieve, not only as a targeted basis, but as a measurable outcome of what we're trying to build, and we work backwards. The agencies are getting very good at this, not only good in how they interact with TV as a channel, addressable TV as a channel, but as they start to bring in other channels. So using addressable TV, since it's based on offline PII data, it's a spine. But how do those people actually interact when we looked at a digital aspect or a digital campaign? Since we are who we are and flexible as we are, we can actually get the exposure data from that. Or with our mobile partners, we can get the data from that. Now the agencies and the advertisers are saying, where can 1 + 1 = 3 or greater? Where does addressable TV work really well on its own? Where does it work even better with maybe a digital campaign, and even more so if you bring in the mobile location data? They're starting to see, and the wheels are turning and seeing the aspect. Now, when you throw in the fact that we can get access to the CRM data of our advertisers, now almost to a fault, it's getting extremely interesting. What I mean by that is we went from the people being interesting, did the addressable TV campaign work, to did it sell more brown belts?
Sure.
And that goes a bit too far, so we have to scale them back.
Got it. All right. Well, interesting. A lot of good evolution to come. Kevin, thank you for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.